Hey guys, I'm here. Sorry about the lateness of this video, but yesterday I had a friend come in from out of state, an old college buddy. We had some dinner, went out and saw Black Widow. Review for that should be up. YouTube's acting weird. The load times right now are a little strange. Don't know why an 8-minute video is taking like an hour and a half to upload, but my internet's fine, so don't know what it is. But anyway, we're going to be diving into New Rockstar's breakdown of episode 5 of Loki. If you haven't seen my reaction to this week's episode, it's a doozy. I really like this week's episode. I've liked every episode so far. There hasn't been a weak episode, but this week in particular was just a lot of fun. There's a lot of nuggets in here, some easy things for people to miss. So I'm really curious to see if there's any that I missed as we're diving through this. We've talked about it in our Discord. We've talked about a little bit in the comments of things we've caught ourselves. But let's see if there's anything in particular we may have missed. So guys, let's go ahead and dive into Eric Voss's breakdown of episode 5 of Loki. Here we go.
Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Eric Voss, and this is a breakdown of Loki episode 5, Journey into Mystery. Of course, a nod to the original comic run that introduced Loki and Thor, fitting for an episode filled with Easter eggs to Marvel Comics, but also enough hatches, Egyptian icons, and smoke monsters to haunt me from the series that got me into this kind of stuff, Lost. Which hopefully Loki
still never seen Lost, but I've heard it.
Hey, let's break
it's
down
had a
this
problem with that,
frame
and I know
by
how it
frame,
ends,
all the
despite having never
interesting
seen it.
Details, because this episode's got a lot of them. Hey, and a reminder that you can get our Loki-inspired merch at newrockstars.com.
I didn't see that one,
like this Loki,
because I just bought a bunch of shit from their store the other day, but I didn't see that Loki Gator thing.
Screen with location showing Vormir, the planet that held the Soul Stone Infinity War.
I'll just go ahead and say right now, I didn't get any of these. I haven't bothered at all with any of the monitor stuff, so I'll just go ahead and give myself a pass on all of this. I didn't even bother to think about it.
In-game, Seoul, South Korea, Zimbabwe, and Oak Island, Nova Scotia. Maybe a nod to the Oak Island treasure, the theorized Knights Templar treasure believed to be buried on Oak Island that people think might contain the Holy Grail, the Ark of the Covenant, Shakespearean manuscripts. And the camera
never heard of that.
Flips upside down and then rotates.
I love this shot.
The chronomonitor room back wall just dissolves into the Timekeeper elevator doors, which then dissolve into their chamber, where we now reverse the rotation so the frame rotates counterclockwise toward the severed Timekeeper android head. A true journey into mystery, this opening shot is, reflecting how each of these settings have been in their own ways smoke screens for some deeper truth beyond them. Much like how the final shot of this episode is yet another literal smoke screen, peeling back to reveal some other truth beyond, but even that might contain another secret twist that I'll talk about later. But notice how the series keeps focusing on that one central Timekeeper more than the other two, almost as if that android could be a primary one, specifically designed in its creator's image. We enter the Void, the TVA's supposed dumping ground. We pass the Lighthouse of Alexandria, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Now this Void also contains the Pyramids of Giza, another ancient wonder, and with the Hanging Gardens of Babylon showing up in Eternals, that makes 3 out of 7 wonders in the MCU this year. This lighthouse also bookends the Lit Tower, which maybe is a lighthouse in the final shot, and trailer footage tells us that that setting has a library inside it, perhaps another source of illumination. Next on the left is Doctor Strange's Sanctum Sanctorum.
Damn, I missed that one.
Those guys pruned from it. Maybe there was some past conflict between the Sorcerer Supreme and the TVA over who really should monitor the multiverse. Now, as we pass Avengers Tower, we realize written on it is not Avengers or A or Stark, but Kang, as in Kang Enterprises, the company Tony Stark sold this tower to in the comics. It's run by Mr. Gryphon, revealed to be Kang the Conqueror, the latest clue that Kang could be our man behind the curtain after all. To the left is another building that, if you look closely at the top of it, is labeled Ken Park 2018, it looks like, suggesting this whole void could be made up of pieces of histories that Kang has conquered, similar to his kingdom of Chronopolis. 2018 would be right after the snap, which could be when Kang Enterprises moved.
I would just have to say, if everything in there is like from a pruned Kang timeline, it would almost be like Kang's failing right now. It's like, I don't know if this is his attempt to build that collection, or just like whoever's behind the scenes just like cock blocking Kang throughout all of time right now, because that's just what it looks like if you're like connecting those two things there.
Into that tower. Notice how trotting around on the ledges are these indigo bird things with their spherical heads that hover over their necks. They run on 5 little hot dog feet all over the void. No clue what these are. This episode was written by Rick and Morty writer Tom Kaufman, who wrote the season 3 Fruipyland Clone Beth episode with a similarly bonkers pocket reality filled with goofy creatures and an immature exile who crowns himself king. And then finally some answers.
What is this place? Where are we? Who are you?
This is the void, that's Alioth, and we're his lunch. Come on!
Alioth is a trans-temporal entity from the Marvel Comics who takes the form of this kind of carnivorous smoke. He rivals the time empire of Kang the Conqueror, and Kang uses the entity of Tempest to trap Alioth in eternal battle so that Kang can expand his rule. And it just so happens that Ravonna Renslayer is also part of this 1993 storyline. So I'm wondering if in this case, Kang may be using Alioth as a guard dog as he works behind him to assemble his kingdom. Renslayer explains,
when we prune a branched reality, it's impossible to destroy all its matter. Basically, the branch timeline isn't reset, it's transferred to where? A void at the end of time.
Yeah, Renslayer is appealing to the law of conservation of mass that says matter can neither be destroyed nor created, only transferred. Not that the laws of physics really matter that much on the show, but Renslayer claims to not know who created the TVA, and based on her later scene with B-15, she truly could be a memory-wiped variant, same as the rest of them. But this being Renslayer, the primary love interest in the comics to Kang, I wonder if she could be a teacher or an admin from that FDR high school that caught the eye of a young Nathaniel Richards, maybe even a teacher that he had a crush on, and once he grew up to be Kang, he went back in time to trap her in this phony temporal law office so that she would
Not
catch
creepy.
the bullies and class
Not at all.
clowns who threaten his utopia. Back in the void is a 3-masted wooden ship with lifeboats on the deck. This could be the Santa Maria, Columbus's flagship that struck a reef off the coast of present-day Haiti, sunk, and its wreckage was
I didn't give
recovered.
two
If there's
thoughts
this
to that
huge
ship, to be
flying
honest.
saucer, another aerial phenomenon that could have just been spotted on Earth and then pruned, and then they pass what looks like Red Skull's spinning rocket from the first Captain America film, which was based on the real-life German Focke-Wulf Trabeflugel fighter plane built during the later years of World War II. Then
He
giant
tried.
bald head statues
He tried.
partially buried in the ground. Kind of looks like the big head sculpture in Canmore in Alberta, Canada, the home province of that son of a bitch. James Howlett, aka Logan, aka Wolverine. Who'd you think I was gonna say?
Go fuck yourself.
So these Loki variants are classic Loki, Richard E. Grant dressed in Loki's classic attire from the early comics, boastful Loki, whose clothes look like the Dark Reign era of Loki. He wields a Mjolnir made from a piston and a piece of a train rail. Kid Loki, who carries Loki's Leviathan sword from Norse mythology, and Alligator Loki. And Loki asks them,
But if you thought of using a 10-pad?
Oh, the one thing that could easily get us out of here. Yes! They're all over the place, right, guys?
Fine.
Loki Gator
God,
blinks,
I love
as
it.
Gators do side by side, but it plays like an eye roll here. I love it. And they pass a big pile of lunch trays, which must be ones from the TVA cafeteria. Like, rather than cleaning and reusing them, they just prune them all. So wasteful. And you know these are from the TVA because along
That
that pile are
is
also boxes
so
of Boku
funny.
juice. Hey, by the way, losing your hair can be a bummer. 2 out of 3 guys will experience
All
some
right,
form
I don't
of
need to
male
hear
pattern
about
baldness
keeps.
by the time they're 35. I know.
This one time when we were children, he transformed himself into a snake, and he knows that I love snakes. So I went to pick up the snake to admire it, and he transformed back into himself, and he was like, "Yeah, it's me." We were 8 at the time.
Then there is a giant helmet of the Ant-Man villain Yellow Jacket. Last seen with
Yep.
his damaged resizer, shrinking him down to nothing, but perhaps still alive somewhere in the quantum realm. This recalls the shocking imagery of Ant-Man's giant corpse strewn across the post-apocalyptic landscape in Old Man Logan. And then, yes, the Thanos copter.
Yeah.
One of the goofiest toy-pushing moments from Marvel
Yep.
Comics, with Endgame lightly referencing it when Thanos rotated his sword, now presumably pruned from some alternate timeline. Though this
God, I
could
wish we
mean
could
some
see
alternate
him in
timeline
it.
Thanos was pruned here and then maybe consumed by Alioth? There's also a huge warhead, maybe some stolen nuke that, were it not pruned, would have started a global nuclear war. And then they enter this hatch that we get a better look of later with text written on it in Hindi. In the circle, that translates to A, and then the yellow writing on the right, Pravesh Dwar, entry door, and then to the green on the left, Savdahan Vishela, careful, poisonous. So maybe this is a hatch for an Indian nuclear facility or their nuclear submarine, the INS Arihant. Then a great floorboard gag sinking down to show us what is buried underneath. More lunch trays
Yeah.
and silverware, a buried Mjolnir, and trying to get to
And
it,
Throg.
frog in a jar marked 365, a nod to Throg in Thor comic issue 365. I love how you can hear him grunting as he throws himself against the glass, just like how Thor did in his cell in the first Avengers movie. Their hideout is a customized bowling alley, looks like circus lanes written on the back wall there. Kid Loki has made a throne out of what looks like a Santa land from a mall, or did Santa get pruned too? There's a space mission pinball game, and then a Polybius arcade box. This was an urban legend from the Portland area in the 80s and 90s that claimed the government could have rigged games called Polybius for hypnosis and mind control uses. Renslayer and Miss Minutes worked together to try to stall Sylvie.
Find Loki.
Find the man behind the curtain.
And kill him.
Yes, the man behind the curtain, of course, a direct nod to the Wizard of Oz, which this
Yep.
TVA mystery creator is clearly based on. But the way Miss Minutes picks up these nonverbal cues from Renslayer is just another reason to think something more will be revealed about this character. But back in the bowling alley, they listened to the Mike Flowers Pops cover of Wonderwall, an intentionally hokey cover of that annoyingly sincere song by Oasis. That one asshole at the party in college who brought his guitar Hask to play. They drink Roxy wine. ROXX probably got it from Rock's Cart. Classic Loki and Boastful Loki both have huge chalices, but they gave Loki a small one. Kid Loki sips High C Ecto Cooler. Between them, there's a campfire.
Oh, I didn't notice it was Ecto Cooler.
Beside Alligator Loki is a book, The Mystery and Lore of Monsters by C.J.S. Thompson, a rare 1930s survey of human deformities and monster lore. Alligator Loki calls bullshit on Boastful Loki's tale of defeating Cap and Iron Man getting all the Infinity Stones.
Well, at least my Nexus event wasn't eating the wrong neighbor's cat.
Alligator Loki goes right for his hand, just like how he later Captain Hook's President Loki. And Classic Loki explains how he survived Thanos.
I cast a projection of myself, so real, even the mad Titan believed it. Then hid as inanimate debris.
This is crazy. The writers apparently worked into Classic Loki's backstory a fan theory that channels like ours discussed back in 2018. That during Loki's death scene in Infinity War, a floating piece of debris
Hell,
in the
even I
background
thought
looked
that was
like
the
Loki
case.
with his big curved horns, making us think that Loki might have faked
And that was
his death.
before I even watched
A theory
New
that
Rockstars.
I was forced to apologize for. I just look forward to the 2024 Ghost Rider movie where Mephisto says Agatha's Devils in the Details comeback was a reference to him. Classic Loki says he
Landed on a remote planet and stayed there in isolation, in solitude, for a long, long time.
Yeah, he says he got lonely and tried to leave and then he got arrested. I wonder if his lonely planet could have been Vormir, referenced earlier this episode, but also back in episode 2, where the screen listed a Nexus event on Vormir in the year 2301, which would have been hundreds of years after that moment with Thanos. But I do have another theory on this guy, so more on him later. They meet a new Loki gang led by President Loki, who's a reference to the 2016 Vote Loki miniseries in which Loki runs for president, pledging that he's not afraid to lie to people.
Oh
But
my
then there's
God,
this
that
other variant
art,
one,
ew.
who was the same one who was labeled variant L8914 back in episode 2. Another one has a helmet made of silverware, probably gotten from all those TVA lunch trays, and then another with a helmet with a bike handlebar. Sylvie, who pruned herself earlier, awakens on a school bus and enchants a branch of Alioth, getting
With some
a quick
random
vision of
eggs
what it's
behind her,
guarding.
'cause she was, like, in a
Rocket ring
nest.
suspended at the end of time that I pointed out in trailer footage with a castle and a lit tower. Now this castle does look a bit like a darker version of Neuschwanstein in Germany, which is an inspiration to many fantasy castles. Mobius drives up in a Skinny's pizza car to save her. Notice how the plate number is GRNW1D, so maybe like Grunwald, maybe a nod to Mark Grunwald, the Marvel Comics writer of many of these influencing titles that in the comics the TVA staff was all designed to look like, specifically Mobius. He actually might have cameoed in the courtroom banner in the show. Behind them is a suspension bridge that looks like a cross between the towers of San Francisco's two major bridges, both Golden Gate Bridge and Oakland Bay Bridge. And then there's also a sign for Wrightville Theater, screening the movie Oswald and the Martian. Now a different similar town, Wrightsville, Pennsylvania, showed up in an Nexus event in 1832, but this movie might be referring to Mars, a 1930 short animated by Walt Disney for Universal starring Oswald the Rabbit. Mobius drives past the pyramids
be.
of Giza and the Sphinx, but notice
Sphinx.
the Sphinx has not lost its nose. Perhaps that's why it was pruned, because it was
I
supposed to lose
did
it. And
notice
yes, a
that
reminder,
detail.
The pyramids of the Sphinx do show up as trophies in King's Chronopolis if that ends up being the case. But to the right is a structure that before I had thought was Stonehenge, but in
Yeah,
this clearer
no.
footage, I don't think it's Stonehenge.
Yeah, it's
seems
100%
columns to me.
not.
So I don't know, maybe some ancient Greek structure, maybe the White House after it was burned down in I've been going on a historical while watching this show. The Lokis all bicker.
You led the wolves to our door.
We prefer snakes to wolves.
I've eaten both. They die just the same.
Snakes and wolves could be nods to Jormungandr, the Great Snake, and Fenrir, the wolf, or Fenris in the MCU, both of whom are Loki's offspring in Norse mythology. Alligator Loki bites off President Loki's hand, causing him to let out a very long scream if you listen to it all the way through. Classic Loki gets them out of there by conjuring up duplicates of themselves, with duplicate Kid Loki tossing Alligator Loki on one of the others, also known as Thor and Loki's Get Help maneuver.
Get help!
That's a good one. I didn't catch
The
that.
USS Eldridge drops into the
Or
void.
didn't
This
think about
was
that.
A real-life World War II era ship that was believed to be part of a debunked conspiracy theory known as the Philadelphia experiment, in which people claimed it was given an invisibility shield, and people thought it vanished. The teams regroup at a
I think there was an
barber shop where they
X-Files
roast one of
episode
those
about
bird
that.
creature things. And interestingly, Mobius didn't
Maybe that's what
remember
those
there
was
ever
in those
being an
eggs.
Alligator Loki. Perhaps another clue that there just could be multiple Mobiuses. Meanwhile, Loki and Sylvie chat outside.
It's cold.
Frost giants aren't supposed to get cold, so Loki must have been conjuring up that blanket just so they could snuggle.
That's just a line.
One of the birds
Yeah.
finds this tank. This is the Chrysler TV-8, a nuclear-powered tank that was designed by Chrysler in the 50s to be deployed against the USSR, but thank God was never actually put into production. But maybe this came from a timeline where this did actually happen, probably with horrible results. In the distance is the Dark Aster, Ronin's ship from the Guardians of the Galaxy. There also looks like an oil platform. Maybe this is the Deepwater Horizon. So Loki asks Mobius,
What will you do at the TVA? Burn it to the ground. Thanks for the spark.
call back to Loki's promise all the way back in the first episode.
I'm gonna burn this place to the ground.
Now, on this landscape, you can see the head
living
of
tribunal.
The tribunal. That's the three-headed cosmic judge of all the multiverse. I don't know what timeline its head would have come from, but I do like how Loki and Sylvie stand in front of it as they face Alioth, almost as if they are now on the side of justice in this noble fight. And a little later in the scene, there is in the background a crashed helicarrier with a Hydra logo. Perhaps this came from a reality where Project Insight was successful and
I didn't notice that.
Needed to hide itself. Loki waves his flaming sword to try to distract Alioth, but it does not work, making him remember what classic Loki said earlier.
But blades are worthless in the face of a Loki sorcery. They stunt our magical potential.
So Loki realizes he must drop this sword and join Sylvie in her enchantment. But they get some major backup from the old man. Natalie Holt's music is incredible. She actually said she used a 32-voice choir for all the vocals here, and you might have noticed right in this moment, it samples Richard Wagner's Norse-inspired Ride of the Valkyries. Dun, 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 dun. He casts this epic illusion of Asgard, which at first looks a lot like the Emerald City in the green light there, but I love its detail down to those statues of warriors past on all the edifices. But the illusion fades, and classic Loki gets consumed.
I just want to give Richard E. Grant any more praise, just because, not that he needs any more, but my God, I loved his performance in this. And if you guys are not new to the channel, you guys know that I watch a lot of the DC TV stuff. And sometimes, I at least recently specifically too, I've had a complaint about, and other actors have talked about this doing superhero things before, about how a lot of the time it's just standing there and putting your hands up, and then the VFX guys do a bunch of other stuff. And it's not even hard to do that. I'm not even gonna like pretend. There's people that are just like, that's all they do. Arms are up, there's nothing happening in the body. And the one detail that really drove it home for me was when he was like, you could feel his entire body. Like you could see his muscles tensing as he's performing this act. Every action was with intent and purpose, glorious purpose. And I just like, for somebody just coming in here who's not done any of this, it just shows how committed he is. And my God, thank you. Because it's just like, he could have easily just been, or just, VFX guys, are you done? All right. But no, he was like getting in there. Like you could feel he was pulling that together. Thank you, Richard E. Grant.
Notice how he did have some green sorcery glowing in his hands, but then just
Look at
lets
it! His hands are shaking!
final second as he laughs with glee, making me wonder if this guy could have pulled an Obi-Wan and let himself get taken here so that he could respawn in a new form. Hold that thought, I'm almost there. Because Sylvie and Loki enchant Alioth and open the gate to
I don't know.
beyond the void, revealing the
He might actually be
castle
gone,
with the
but-
living tower on the rock ring at the end of time. Who will they find there? Well, yes, this series has done a lot
King
to point
Loki.
to Kang the Conqueror, because sure, why else would you include Ravonna Renslayer and Alioth and Kang Enterprises and all these Chronopolis parallels just to completely avoid the upcoming MCU big bad that connects these dots? But hey, we've been led astray before, right? So you could make the case for other possible big bads like Doctor Doom, maybe an evilist Loki, maybe some version of Miss Minutes, or simply, what if we were to just follow the theme of the man behind the curtain, a Weasley old man, the creator of the Timekeepers in the comics,
He who remains.
And I will leave you with this, folks. Notice as they approach that castle, a piece of debris floats up. Now, at first I thought this could have been a ship, but even if it is just debris, classic Loki just confirmed that floating debris can sometimes be a Loki in disguise after he fakes his death. Classic Loki, for some reason, passed up Mobius's offer to leave the void, and then he stayed and showed off an insane level of sorcery. Sorcery that he spent who knows how long refining, and then could have faked his death in that moment and then lured these variants to his castle where he reveals himself as He Who Remains, an original Loki who survived and built the Timekeepers and the TVA in order to control the multiverse with this ultimate illusion. Whether or not you believe that, or if you think it's Kang or someone else, you gotta admit, that truly would be a classic Loki move. Comment down below with your theories
right.
as we head into this finale episode. And another reminder to support this channel.
All right, guys. So I think, and as much as I want it to be Kang, with the track record the shows have had up to this point of being very character driven, I almost feel like it just can't be Kang. As much as there's so many nods to him, so many like direct Easter eggs, callbacks, Ravonna, Kang Industries, the Alioth, all the different things we've seen in his Chronopolis. We have seen Chronopolis and Ant-Man. It's just like, I don't know. It's just too easy. We know he's coming. And I feel like it's either going to be He Who Remains, maybe even just the original person that started the TVA, not a Loki variant, but the one I feel like it's going to be, and again, it follows the theme and the repetition that we've seen with the other shows of being about their characters. I feel like it's going to be another Loki, an evil Loki. And who knows? And I just posed this just for shits and giggles because that was a long form, like he said, classic Loki opened the door for an out for any Loki to survive Thanos' attack. The TVA didn't do anything for those hundreds of years. Normally, if they detect any kind of variation of the timeline, if they had realized he didn't die in that moment and was living somewhere else, they would have immediately found him and pruned him. But they let him live, which makes me think that they assumed his file ended, because they didn't detect him until he decided to re-enter the timeline, because he just stayed away from everybody. He no longer influenced anything else. He just stayed out of it, kept himself away from it. But the moment he missed his brother, his connections too much, and decided to go back and interact with the existing time stream, that was when they detected him. That was when they found him and pruned him. Now, let's say, again, we don't know what the TVA's like thought on or detection, how it works for any of the other ones. For all we know, they stopped monitoring him the moment they thought he died as well. Like, his illusion may have even worked until they detected him later. So their file could end exactly like our Loki's did. And we know that this has been a theory for a long time that may have been how the original Loki survived that moment, had they gone that route. And that makes me think that just because we saw file ended in the first episode of that Loki, that Loki may not be dead. But however, in fitting to where we're going with this Loki we've been following, maybe Now, I don't completely like think this is what's going to happen. I'm just putting this out there as a fun theory. That is it. Don't get upset because I'm presenting it. Don't get upset if you think it's bullshit or whatever. Just ride with it. Have fun with it. Don't invest too much thought in this. But I just thought about it and I thought it was fun. What if, he did the exact same thing the classic Loki did, and this would muddy his redemption arc, is if he did all of that to have his death be faked. Like, he knew Thanos would probably catch him, and in that moment, if he did exactly what classic Loki did, he could survive. Maybe he found a way to evade the TVA, or even created it beyond time and survived long enough to create the TVA itself and mastermind this whole thing from the shadows. Because I still feel like that in the end, it will at least be some variant of Loki. Because I feel like for it to be some random person they haven't set up at all, like the He Who Remains, which is who created the TVA in the comics, but it just wouldn't have that emotional hit or tie in with the themes of the show if it's not a variation of Loki, or at least Kang set up with all the little things. I think it'd be a little, for a lot of people, I know there's some people that would like it to be He Who Remains, but I feel like for a lot of people, for somebody to just be introduced outright in the end, with no setup whatsoever, would be disappointing to quite a few people. And I had a lot of people voice that opinion. A lot of people would be upset if it's not Kang, and a lot of people are like, it just would make sense for it to be a Loki. And I think that with what we've seen and how these showrunners have been handling these Disney Plus shows, it is more likely going to be Loki, because the show is called Loki. It's been all about self-reflection, self-doubt, self-fulfillment, self-growth, self-love. That, at the end of it, what would make the most sense than to conquer yourself in the end? Your evil, your doubts, your negative traits, the version of you that you never wanted to be, the one that just could not get away or break away from their self-destructive nature. Except this one, however, unlike the other Lokis that may have failed repetitively throughout all of time, succeeded in their conquest of time, of everything, to create a world where he was in control of everything. And they would fit in with the theme of the show for them to conquer that Loki. How does that Loki come to be? We've seen him in the trailer. There's at least a version of Loki from the trailers we have yet to see, with him in that throne room, all clad in his classical Asgardian gear. So who knows? Who knows where it's going to go? But I just wanted to pose that because I thought it'd be fun. And how do you get a King Loki? And if you wanted to continue forward, and we know they're making a season 2 of this, if you wanted to move forward with this version of Loki as the persistent Loki, as the hero Loki, or whatever, how do you kind of reconcile with the existence of the original and this one? You just have him kill him. Because if that was the original Loki that did survive, just have this new Loki come in with Sylvie and they conquer that one for good. Now, I know a lot of people would be really upset with that, and I still don't really even know how I feel about that if that was the case either way. It could just be a completely different Loki that went about things a completely different way and created or took over the TVA. Or it's Kang, which I would also I'd be more down for as a fan of the comics, as the fan of the story and where it's going, especially setting up the big bad down the road, which we know is coming. I would like for it to be Kang. I just don't think the show's going to go with it. That's why I'm very kind of clung on to this idea of that it's going to be some variation of Loki. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. I know some people are probably going to be irritated that I proposed this at all. But guys, just be civil. We're just here having fun. Think what you want to think about where it's going to go. I just don't want anybody to be disappointed. Just let the show tell the story and take it for what it is, because if we let our expectations get the best of us, we're not really going to enjoy much of anything. And I'm going to hop off my soapbox and pass this off to you guys. Sound off the comments. What did you think of New Rockstar's breakdown of the episode. Let me know your thoughts, your theories, your speculations down in the comments, and we'll carry on that conversation after the video or in the Discord if you want to join that and come hang out and chat about this and all the other shows we've been covering here on the channel and films and whatnot. Links to that and all my socials are in the description of this video. Shout out to our channel legends, Mandy Sherritt, Ryan Karen, and Jason Coleman. Thank you guys so much for your support as always. But guys, that's it for this video. Again, I'm sorry for this being late, but I will catch you guys in the next episode of Loki. Take care, everybody.